We are very happy.
It's Saturday, the sun is shining. I'm about to empower some people with some legal knowledge, guys.
Looking forward to it.
Right, we're live. We are alive now on Facebook, guys. Welcome to all our viewers in Facebook, YouTube. Thank you so much. First, I need to say thank you, God, for us for being here today to make it possible for us, for the Father Talk Show to come out again. Now we are back, the Father Talk Show, alive, and I'm super excited. I got the most amazing guest. You know, you fathers, men, we love you, you're kings, and we salute you because you're doing the most amazing and wonderful work. But sometimes we just need, you may need some guidance, some help, or you're going through custody battle with your wife or with your ex or with your partner. We've got this amazing guest speaker who's a solicitor. She's visited us once and she's back again. She's going to tell her story. But today, as the Father Talk Show, we're going to say thank you so much. Thank you for liking the video, sharing the video. And as you do so, it encourages us to know that we are doing the right thing. So we want to say thank you. We welcome you. Now I want to introduce you to my king, right? My co-host, as far as I'm concerned, he's a king. All right. And we must treat our men as king. So my king, Daniel, my co-host.
Margaret, how are you doing?
I'm
good,
very
good
well.
to be back. Good to be back again. So, and looking forward to another series of enlightening discussions around how to be a better father and how to sort of navigate all aspects of being a single father. And yeah, we've had a lot of great feedback from people who have found, you know, certain aspects and snippets of the previous shows really useful, and we have our first, I think, our very first repeating guests, don't we? Crystal.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. Welcome, Crystal. Let me give you a quick everyone a quick introduction to Crystal. Crystal is a family solicitor and founder of Stalwart Solicitors. She is dedicated to empowering clients with legal knowledge to make informed decisions. Offering 30 minutes of free advice, Crystal has 10 years of experience and Law Society Family Panel accreditation, specializes in family law. And with this sole focus on family law, Crystal brings empathy and practical problem-solving skills to each case. And welcome, Crystal. Thank you very much for coming back to the show. And we're delighted to have you here.
Indeed, we are absolutely delighted to have you, Crystal. Crystal, welcome. Tell the viewers who you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be back. Thank you so much, Margaret and Daniel, wonderful co-hosts. So I am a family solicitor. I'm founder of family law firm Stalwart Solicitors, and our primary aim is to empower clients with legal knowledge. And we do that in a variety of ways. As Daniel has touched upon, we provide an initial complimentary meeting to our clients. We offer them evening and weekend appointments, and as well as online appointments, face-to-face appointments where the client lives or works. We hire meeting rooms in their locality. And in that way, we are able to cater to the client's needs, because we know fathers, you know, anyone with children has childcare time constraints. You know, they have to do the school run sometimes. If they're a single father, they may have to have working commitments, which mean they can't come and see a solicitor in an office between 9 and 5:30. And as a solicitor, I think we have to be mindful of those things to really work around the client to make sure that everyone has access to the knowledge that will help them make informed decisions.
Wow, wow, that is powerful. I mean, today's topic, which we don't talk about, and I'm so happy that my co-host is here. He's a guy, he's probably going to go into it, also a father. We don't talk about domestic abuse about men.
Yeah.
Now, it's what do you think, Daniel, as a man, kind of as a father as well?
I think in general, when you speak about domestic abuse, you tend to think of women going through domestic abuse, and a lot of times you hear about this, men being the abusers. But I think, and perhaps Crystal will be able to enlighten us on this. Men can go through just as much domestic abuse as women can, and often it's not talked about, it's not shared. And if a man mentions it, then perhaps he's laughed at his friends, or he's even scared to mention it. He's scared to bring it up, for the shame that comes with it. And so yeah, it's something that we're going to touch upon and perhaps enlighten ourselves further. And for any man that is perhaps experiencing this, we're going to see what they can do from a legal perspective. So yeah, Crystal, just tell us a little bit about your experience. Have you come across many men that have approached you with this?
Yes, I have. I find that I've been practicing now for 11 years, and over time, I'm happy to say that there's been a more open line of communication in terms of clients, and particularly male clients, feeling comfortable to disclose that they've been the victim of domestic abuse. And domestic abuse, just to enlighten our viewers, is a very broad subject. It doesn't just necessarily mean physical abuse. It can be verbal abuse, emotional abuse, coercive or controlling behavior, harassing behavior, financial abuse. And sometimes, our clients, we find that when you start speaking to them, you have an initial meeting with them, you realize that actually what they've been experiencing, they may not call it domestic abuse, but that is broadly what it is. And unfortunately, verbal abuse and emotional abuse, psychological abuse, they're more prevalent now, as areas that I, as a family lawyer, do flag up to my clients to say, look, that behavior is not acceptable. You shouldn't have been treated that way. And it's something that can be pursued, because of course, if someone is abusive to, say, a father in children matters, it means they could be considered a risk of harm to the child, because the child may be witnessing this domestic abuse. So that's why it's relevant. And also, importantly, I want to communicate to the viewers that there is support out there. You can apply to court for protective orders, things called non-molestation orders, to protect you from risk of harm from that person. And it can be a partner, an ex-partner, a family member. If you're ever feeling that you've been abused or harassed in any way, there's court orders there to protect you, and they can last for a year and can be renewed after that time. So it's really important that the viewers really realise that domestic abuse is something that they should flag up, and something that they can really help their children and their wider family from not being exposed to.
Okay.
Thank you so much to share that. But one of my questions is, most men probably will not go out there to report domestic abuse. They're going through domestic abuse. What would you say to encourage a guy out there if they are going through domestic abuse? What are their first steps to report it?
I would say it's really important to, firstly, if they're at imminent risk of harm, of course, contact the police. In my experience, a lot of men feel that if they are physically abused by a woman, or someone that would be perceived as physically weaker than them, they won't want to report it to friends, family members, or police. But it's really important that there is some record, even if they don't want to pursue, that person being charged, because reporting it creates then a picture of what's been going on. It creates a picture of that person's pattern of behavior. And if things were to escalate, the police would then have a record. Well, this client came to us and, he said that his partner had refused to allow him to leave the home, or she'd scratched his face or something, there's lots of different incidents that I've experienced through clients' testimonials in terms of the sorts of abuse they've been subjected to. But for example, in the future, if they had to go to court, they'd have a record of this pattern of behaviour, regardless of them wanting to pursue it. It would be out there, so to speak, that they'd found it serious enough to contact the police or tell their GP or domestic abuse organisation about these incidents. So I would say it's really important to try and tell a professional. I know it's difficult. However, there are trained domestic abuse advocates now who are trained to assist both men and women to make the process as smooth as possible, and to ensure that really that the things in place to safeguard them should the behaviour escalate. I think that's always the concern that I have, that often it starts off as something that may be seen as just a one-off incident, but that can easily spiral out of control. And of course, where there are children involved, the client wants to be seen as a protective factor. And as I said, going back to it, the reason why it's important to report domestic abuse, particularly if you're a father, is because if your children are witnessing this abuse, and children's services were to become involved, although you're not the perpetrator, you could be seen as failing to protect the children. So you always need to think, what objectively could witnessing this abuse or hearing the shouting and the screaming and the obscenities, how could that affect your children? And if you think it's negative, then you need to take proactive steps to ensure that that doesn't continue.
So thanks for that, Chris. That was really well explained. What kind of things do you see with regards to the differences between domestic abuse, between women going through it and then men going through domestic abuse? Is it purely like a physical versus emotional aspect to it, or yeah?
I would say that the difference is, it's a difficult one really, because even at the moment, I'm dealing with clients that have been the victims of coercive controlling behaviour, harassment, and there is usually some sort of physical abuse element in there. And I think the golden line that often comes up, and it's really sad actually, is I didn't tell anyone because I'm double her size and I didn't think anyone would believe me.
Wow.
And that's often what I find with the male clients that I've worked with, in terms of the reason why physical abuse is not disclosed. The psychological and the emotional abuse is unfortunately more commonplace, particularly as regards to things like child arrangements, using the children as a weapon, or saying, if you don't do this, you will never see your children again, for example. That would be classed, in my mind, as psychological abuse. Or if you don't give me a certain amount of money in child maintenance, I will not let you see the children. Or even threats. If you don't do what I'm asking you to do, I will say that you've hit me, or I'll go to the police and say you've abused me in some other way. So, and of course, that's all domestic abuse. That's all psychological and emotional abuse, and coercive and controlling behaviour as well. Also things like, give me your mobile telephone. I want to know who you've been speaking to.
Oh, even something like that.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the act of forcing someone to give you their phone, if you want to give the person your phone, of course, everyone's free to do what they want. But if you're saying, if you don't do this, then this will be the outcome, or saying, continuing to say that, you've been unfaithful, I know you have, because if you hadn't, then you'd give me your phone, and I want to see track your movements on, say, you can have apps where you can trap someone's phone. I've had clients where their partner has forced them to put the app on the phone so they know where they are every morning, noon and night. Now, of course, that's not normal behaviour, I would argue. I would see that as coercive and controlling behaviour.
And what you've just said there, for example, if a man is going through that right now and they are listening to this, can you give them some pointers, some advice, some steps that they can take to kind of protect themselves from that? Can you give us any steps, if anybody's listening to what you've just said?
Yes, I would be saying, firstly, remember that to trust your gut instinct. If something doesn't feel like a normal, healthy relationship, it probably isn't. If you feel that the demands asked of you appear unreasonable and unsustainable, then they probably are. So then you need to think about, who am I going to share this information with? Often you'd come to a family lawyer, particularly if you're a father, if there's some issue relating to seeing your children or where your children live. You may be ending a relationship or thinking about ending a relationship and worried about what that may look like in terms of child arrangements and those sorts of things. And therefore you'd come to me and I would ask you some questions about your family dynamic and what's happened in the past, and I'd be able to flag up what I would consider behaviour that could be seen as domestic abuse, and I would speak to you about that and we'd discuss a plan forward. But if you're at the stage whereby perhaps you're in this relationship but you don't at the moment recognise that you need to separate from this person, so there's not actually a legal issue yet, I'd be saying that you need to be able to share this with someone, whether that be a close friend, a family member. You know, as I said, there are professionals out there. If you're feeling that this is causing you to suffer from any depression or anxiety, your GP, someone is important. A problem shared is a problem halved, they say. So I think that it's important that you are able to share this with someone. And then from that, you may identify that the relationship has come to an end and you do need some legal advice regarding the children matters. Or, you know, it might not be that. If you want to try and rekindle the relationship or ensure that the relationship changes for the positive, it may be that you need to see a coach or a therapist or a couples guidance counsellor. Because, you know, I'm a family lawyer. My job is to help people when the relationship has come to an end, or to help them see their children or protect their children from being, you know, removed from the jurisdiction. That's my remit. But I also recognise, having been a lawyer now for 11 years, life isn't always about going to court. It's not all about going to court. Sometimes
That's good. That's really good to hear coming from a solicitor.
No, it really isn't, because I always think when I'm solving a problem, what is the problem the client wants to solve? How can I use the law to help them? But sometimes clients will call me and say, I don't think my relationship has come to an end, for example. I'm not going to be telling them they need to go for a divorce. I'm going to be saying you need to go to couples therapy, or you need to find some sort of way therapeutically of working through what you want before you decide that the relationship has come to an end. Because clearly, by virtue of you telling me that, that doesn't lead me to believe the relationship has come to an end. And I think that's what any good solicitor wants. You want the clients that need your assistance when it's the right time, and if it's the right time. Not everyone's going to be a client.
I was going to say, do you sometimes end up being the agony aunt for your clients then? Or
Yes, I think I am. And sometimes I think I say the things that perhaps a friend or family members haven't said, because I'm able to look at things objectively. I might just reflect and say, well, you've told me that you've been together for a long time and you're going through some difficulties. However, you're unsure about the future, and that's fine. And I can give you some legal advice, but I'd be telling you, you'd really need to think about whether you believe your relationship has come to an end. And if the answer is no, then the things you can do to try and rectify the situation and see whether there's a way positively forward if you were to stay together. So yes, I'm a firm believer that you should always try and use a holistic approach to address every issue the client has, but also to think about what's best ultimately for the client.
And just out of curiosity, have you come across many cases where there has been domestic abuse and then there's been reconciliation, you know, between the partners, they've made up, or are most such cases like that end up going the route of separation? I'm just, you know, curious to know.
Well, right now, Daniel, that's a very good question, because you can imagine over the 11 years you see a lot of different types of cases. I've had a couple of cases whereby there has been domestic abuse and then they've decided to reconcile. Now, I'm all for reconciliation. From my perspective, I think my concern in those cases have been that, firstly, there's been systems in place or some sort of therapeutic support that means that this isn't going to be history repeating itself. because I do believe that we as humans, we can change, we can evolve, we can all become better. So I'm not here to say if you've been the perpetrator of domestic abuse, you can never change, because there's actually lots of things out there to ensure that you can. There's always a reason why someone behaves in a certain way, and there's always steps that can be taken to ensure that behaviour is rectified positively. So from my perspective, where I've had a client that's decided to reconcile with someone who has previously been domestic abusive, I've thought about ensuring the client has taken into consideration and looked at what steps have been taken by the other person to change for the better, to ensure that the next time they're in a relationship together, it's a more healthy, positive relationship. I would say on that topic as well, Daniel, and this might be something for another time, but culture plays a big part in terms of how family matters are dealt with, how reconciliation is dealt with, particularly in certain types of cultures. I found Asian cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, African cultures, the approach in terms of relationships coming to an end and children matters and domestic abuse is very different, and that the cultural consideration is very, very relevant in dealing with every case based on the facts of the case.
Can you just give us an example on that? Because this is absolutely fantastic, because some cultures, and I've seen it, men are going through domestic abuse because of their culture. They cannot speak about it because it would become a shame to the family. Now, how does that work? That is a really great, can you just expand a little bit about that? Because how that impact, that specific other cultures when it comes to domestic abuse, family, children, and where they go. I mean, that is a great one. Can you just share a bit more on that, onto the culture side of it?
Yes. So, for example, in Middle Eastern culture, the man is seen as the head of the household, a strong male role model. That may mean that if, for example, he's in a relationship with a woman and she has physically abused him, he would be unlikely to tell any friends or family that this has taken place. It would almost bring shame on the family, I would say. Yeah. And they're the words that are used to me. I haven't told anyone because it would bring shame on the family. And I, as the head of the household, am expected to act in a certain way and to be a certain person. And this may tarnish that appearance to the outside world. And so in those cases, you have to ensure that, firstly, they're telling someone who's, empathetic and wants the best for them and their family, but secondly, that the court will consider that regardless of which background you're from, if you have been subjected to negative abusive behaviour, that isn't acceptable. And also, of course, the proceedings are confidential. So, there's no pressure on the client to have to tell friends or family members. This is about him and his family and what's best for him and his family. And I think sometimes the pressure from the wider community weighs very heavily, very, very heavily. So reinforcing the fact that, family courts are private courts. No one's going to be there. No one will ever know the details of his case. The actual proceedings are confidential, can alleviate some concerns in terms of how they'll be perceived in the wider community. And also, I like to try and focus on the reasons why it would be important. So again, going back to fathers, the children in that household, it's very important for them to feel that they're able to be protective in that role, not just for themselves, but for their children, to ensure that things don't spiral out of control. For example, someone at school or a teacher or something could report the family to the local authority, and then the father could be seen as failing to protect. So, that's the worst case scenario, but it's useful that I bring that up just so they know the reasons why it's important to kind of deal with matters now so they don't escalate, and that this will all be very private. So they don't have to, there's no pressure on them to tell anyone they don't want to tell about what's going on.
That's really nice to know, because as you're speaking, I was working with a gentleman, obviously the culture side of it, as he was facing abuse. I mean, he actually video the woman. And I was so shocked. And yet couldn't tell the parent, couldn't tell the family. So he kind of got stuck. And at the end I said, you need to get support. What the police? He says the last time he kind of reported it, this is another thing, he got arrested because obviously she was saying, the police tended to believe her other than him. Is that something like this that come up quite regularly, where they, even though the man's gone through the domestic abuse, they can see the bruises on him, but obviously the woman tells the story, they tend to believe him more. Is that something that you've come across quite regularly? And what can men do about it if this happens to them?
Right. Well, Margaret, unfortunately, I think I'm quite fortunate in that I have both male and female clients. And I always say to both sexes, when it comes down to it, we get the best outcome for our clients based on the evidence in the case. So I have a lot of male clients who come with preconceived ideas that because they're a man, if they go to the family court, they're not going to be believed versus what their ex-partner may say who's a female. Now, I can see why. I mean, if you do a quick Google, if you're on any social media channel, there's people saying that, if you go to the family court, they'll never believe you if you're a man. But in my experience, and I would like to say in the experience of my male clients, that isn't the case. Margaret, what you've said is commonplace. I have lots of clients, male clients, that come to me and tell me that exact same story. And it's very difficult and it's disheartening for them because unfortunately, I don't necessarily think the police that come out when someone calls 999 or 111, don't necessarily think they're very much trained in private domestic matters. Because, some of the things they tell me the police have said, I'm thinking, why would anyone just automatically jump to that conclusion? As a family lawyer, I work with evidence. So if I was approached and there's two people, one saying the other had hit them, you can't there and then decide on who's the person that's guilty just from what one person says. This is 2024. I know that both men and women can be the perpetrators of domestic abuse. I'd like to hope that other professionals also know that. And domestic abuse doesn't necessarily need to leave a mark either.
I'm sure a lot of police know that as well, don't they? A lot of the times police come into someone's home and they see that it can be both parties. And so I think with that in mind, you would think that a lot of times they're a lot more open to the possibility that, someone could be lying, a woman could be lying and saying she was the victim, where in fact she could have been the perpetrator, and vice versa as well.
No, of course.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, go on, Margaret.
That's fine. What I was going to ask you, say for example, there's a guy there in the different culture that we've just mentioned, that's going through this journey. Can you just give them a quick advice what they can do? Like 1 or 2, 3 steps. If you're going through X, Y, and Z, you've been abused by your wife, by your partner, obviously the culture, you're worried about that. Can you just give them a rough guidance where they can go to get that support to talk to?
Yes. So, of course, in terms of if you're thinking about safely leaving the relationship, please come and get some advice from a solicitor, either myself or another solicitor, because I think when you know what your options are, you'll be able to positively see what you can do to get out of the situation. And what I mean is, if you're in an abusive relationship, it's probably not going to be safe for you to stay living in that property. So then we have to think about how can we get the perpetrator out of the property? And that's where the occupation order comes in, which removes the perpetrator from the family home for at least 6 months. And you can renew after that time. But that gives some breathing room, and we can think of long-term solutions. And then we can liaise with other professionals to help with that, whether that be them obtaining private landlord accommodation or council accommodation, housing association accommodation, the idea of maybe relocating somewhere else, and we could make court orders to ensure that that's done by the appropriate way. So I think that I would be saying to them that it's important to tell someone. And actually, I know it's counterintuitive, and I started off this this podcast by saying tell friends and family. When there's cultural considerations, if you believe the response of friends and family is going to be negative, I'd actually say go to professionals. Because I don't think it's necessarily helpful in some of these cultures whereby they don't encourage people to speak out or to try and advocate their rights, or they would be met with a negative response in terms of the information that they're going to tell them. Don't necessarily think it's very helpful to tell someone within the close friends or family circle if it's not going to benefit their objective.
And it could be that the kind of advice you would get from friends or family could actually exacerbate matters and make it worse. It's like, you know, if you're a man, they say, okay, you're a man, you know, show her who, you know, being a man, and, you know, and resort to, you know, physical acts or something like that, and that would make things worse, right?
Yes, exactly. If these cultures believe that as a man, you know, you've got to be a man, this could be very counterproductive. I would say professionals in the situation whereby the culture is so heavily entrenched in certain viewpoints would be a better option.
Mm-hmm.
You keep saying you can come to us. What is your company?
So my company is called
Stalwart Solicitors. Who are you? Who's your company? Who do you serve?
Yes, well, Daniel did a lovely introduction for me, but I'm happy to elaborate a bit more about who I am and what we do. I've been a family lawyer for 11 years. Family law is the only area at our firm we specialise in, which means that we are experts in our field. The whole approach that we take is a very holistic approach, whereby we're looking at the nature of the client's issue and thinking about how we can best solve the problem the client faces. And where that's going to court, we will represent them. And we've talked today a lot about children matter. So it's right, children matters, where children live, time spent with other parents, protective orders if someone feels at risk of harm, as well as specific issue orders, any issue that can't be decided between the parents, such as relocation, change of a child's surname, which school the child attends. But other areas of family law, which we've also touched upon, are the protective orders aspects. If you feel at risk of harm, and we can get orders very quickly, you can make an emergency application to the court and, you know, get into court within a couple of weeks to be able to ensure that you and your children are kept safe. And also there might sometimes be cohabitation disputes. We can assist with those, and divorce, of course, and financial matters on divorce. And when we talk about the non-court things that we can assist with, I'm talking about things like sometimes writing to the other side. A letter can sometimes resolve a dispute around child arrangements without having to go to court, and that saves the client time and money. And also things like cohabitation agreements, so just regulating how you're going to live with someone you're not married to, and what they can expect financially in terms of any contributions they make to renovations or the mortgage at the family home. Again, a cohabitation agreement is for the client's reference and would be seen as legally binding if the relationship were to break down and there was any dispute in terms of what they decided were going to be their arrangements. So yes, it's very much a case of myself and the other lawyers at the firm. It's a case of us really wanting to help the clients, empowering them with all of their options, telling them what we believe is the best course of action. But ultimately, I believe that the client should be left to think about all of the options, and having then known the implications of each course of action to make informed decisions. I really don't like when clients come to me and say other solicitors have not really explained the law or how it may impact them, because family proceedings are really serious. It's to do with the future of people's children, future of people's assets, and they have large implications. So it's important you knew what all your options were before you made one.
Yeah,
that is brilliant. That's fantastic. But I don't know your company's name. So tell your viewers your company's name.
she did say Stalwart, yes?
Yeah, stalwart solicitors. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have clients across the UK. I'd say maybe about 70% of our clients are based in London or the home counties, and the rest in other areas in the UK, because we are able to offer the online appointments as well to ensure that clients that are a bit further afield can still have access to legal advice. And we represent clients at court as well. So if the clients, want their solicitor to represent them at court, we can do that as well for them. I think family law is a fascinating area. I mean, Margaret, some of the clients that you've talked to me about, that you've been exposed to and helped along the way, it's interesting that there's some synergy in terms of the same sorts of conversations are being had, particularly with the clients that are fathers or men that have experienced certain things. And I actually do some speaking as well at events, and really important for me is demystifying family law myths as well, which means that particularly for men, I really want them to feel confident that if they come to a solicitor, a good solicitor, we're able to help them whatever their issues are, because it's not good enough in the court, and rightly so, for you to just say something's happened and a judge to just believe it, because you've got to try and correlate that to some sort of evidence, and that means for a better outcome. And often my clients, they do have evidence to show that they haven't been abusive, or they weren't even at the place that this person says they are when the abuse is alleged to have happened. So you can always find the evidence, and whether that be text message evidence, email evidence, detailed, we'd write a detailed witness statement in terms of dates, times that things happened, and reports to police or other third parties. So I would say that there's never a case that I've dealt with whereby we haven't been able to put forward a robust argument whereby someone has been truthful in what they've said has happened. It's just about finding that evidence in the best possible ways.
Yeah, that's really good to hear.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Sorry, Daniel, I've got this burning question that I need to ask, and then
I got a question too, but go on.
One of the question that I want to ask you, and this come up time and time again, these are fathers, right? They've been to court. They says, yes, you can see the children, but just like you mentioned earlier on, the woman would then say, well, you're not going to see the children because. What can they do when they face in that situation? They've got the rights to see the children, but obviously the woman is not allowing them and permitting them to see the children. Just speak to our viewers out there, maybe going through a journey like this right now. What can they do?
Firstly, I would probably say, have all your communication in writing. So whether that be text message or email, because then you've created a paper trail in terms of the response, your unreasonable responses from the other side. I would say it's really important to try and seek some legal advice as soon as possible. For example, I'm currently dealing with a client and their ex-partner suffers from drug or alcohol misuse issues. They've come to me and we're now writing a letter to the partner. They've separated from that person. The letter sets out the things that we're expecting that partner to do in order to make a safe environment for unsupervised contact. She's not supportive of unsupervised contact, and rightly so, because the person would be a risk of harm to the children if left unattended without another adult, because they're always intoxicated and under the influence of drugs, which isn't, obviously a good environment for children to be around. So I would say you could come to a solicitor, and the first step would be us setting out your position in a letter to the other side. Also setting out that if the behaviour was to continue, that you will have no choice but to make an application at court for a judge to formally decide on child arrangements. It's really important as well that the children aren't used as a weapon. So you would also say that the behaviour in terms of the threats, if you don't do this, then you won't see the children, could be seen as coercive and controlling behaviour, and therefore the client has also been advised that if this behaviour was to continue, there's orders that can be put in place at court to prevent that type of behaviour. So almost getting in early will prevent that person's behaviour from escalating, because often what I find is it starts off with, if you don't do this, then I'll do this. And then matters quickly escalate because that person believes, well, they're not going to fight back, so I'm just going to keep on saying more terrible things or do what I want, because they're never going to get some legal advice, and their behavior becomes more and more unreasonable. That's, in my opinion, what happens. Things often escalate.
And ultimately, it seems like that's, in a way, when you're in a relationship with someone, it's about setting down boundaries of, you know, formal communication and what's going to happen. And if you perhaps haven't done that, then these kind of matters would perhaps evolve into that, which would require legal recourse of some or another, some way, something or another. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Boundaries are very important, whether you're in a relationship or outside and co-parenting. And also making them aware that you've received some legal advice can sometimes really shock someone into behaving properly. You know, they often think they're never going to do anything about it. I can say and do what I want. I can continue to behave however I want. They won't receive any legal advice. If I say I'm the mother or whatever, and they're never going to see the children, they'll just accept it. But when they realise that the partner has received some legal advice and actually knows that as a parent with parental responsibility, they have rights, suddenly they know that they're being watched, so to speak. They know that their actions are under scrutiny. And if it does go to court, it's not going to be very favourable for them when all the messages or the emails or the letters we've sent are used as evidence to support that, you know, my client has tried to be reasonable and it's the other side who's been unreasonable throughout.
Just a quick one, as we're coming towards the end of the interview, what kind of boundaries do a man needs to put around if they're going through abuse, or when it starts, before it starts? What kind of boundaries can they put through? Crystal?
I would say it's very important to, we're all human beings. And I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that men and women are different, but there's more similarities than you would think. We all want to be treated with respect, with dignity. We all want to be treated in a way that we would like others to treat us. What I mean is, I think, scrap that. I think I was saying we all want to be treated in a certain way, and we want others to treat us in that way, to enable us to react positively in the relationship and also when you're separated. And so I would say, if at the start of a relationship, or if something doesn't feel right, I think it should be addressed there and then. Because another common theme that I see coming up is whereby the seeds of these issues earlier on, the client always comes to me and says, well, during the relationship, this happened. And then I say, well, what happened at that time? How was that addressed? And it wasn't addressed. And then it's kind of, the seeds were sown, but they weren't addressed at the time. And then things escalated. And I would also say, don't be afraid to communicate things that you're unhappy with. If someone is abusive to you once, that really needs to be addressed, because they need to know that they've crossed the boundaries that you would consider appropriate behaviour, why it's inappropriate, and also that if it happened again, you may go to the police, or you may say, well, this has happened once, I'm willing to forgive you this time, but I would, if this ever happened again, I'd have to go to the police, or I'd have to end the relationship. You have to be very clear in communicating, I think, because there's always signs before clients have come to see me that the relationship was perhaps going awry, or there were things that happened that wouldn't have been deemed acceptable at the time, but they were kind of glossed over.
And they weren't addressed, were they? They were just perhaps, okay, that's fine. Yeah, no, that's good. Right. Very good advice.
It is indeed. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask you the same question, my king. I love it when I say that. Just should be saying my queen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I still need to train you, right? But the question I want to ask for you to address to some of the men out there on a man's point of view, because this is all about, we're talking about men going through domestic abuse. Right, I want to say, can you speak to our fathers out there, or any man that's going through that journey? What can they do? What boundaries can they put? Daniel, could speak,
Yeah, I mean, I think we each know, I mean, everyone knows if they're being respected or disrespected. We can sense by the tone of a person's communication, how they act with us, the things that they say. And it's like Crystal was saying, it's about nipping that in the bud as early as possible, as, you know, outlining and perhaps sharing with the individual how they are speaking to us in a way that perhaps brings up certain emotions in us. Like, say, for example, you know, what you said there, I found it completely disrespectful, and I don't think it's on that you should say that. And if I said the same thing to you, I don't think you would appreciate it. And just to make them more aware of their words, because sometimes, you know, when we say things, often we're not aware of the energy and the tone and how we say it, because they're said from an emotional basis. And it's just to bring awareness to our partners that that's not something that we are willing to accept, and that we're not willing to entertain their behavior or their words in that manner, and just to share that, but in a balanced way, in a way from strength, rather than from you know, just control, or, you know. So I think it's important to do that, and to do that as early as possible. And I find that if you don't do it early and then you try and do it, there will be more of a battle. Okay.
So one of the great steps is the boundary. The first one to put in is to say, no, I do not agree. I do not like the way you're treating me. I'm not accepting it. So you need to put that straight away to say no, because a lot of people, they're scared of saying no. I do not accept, I do not agree how you're treating me.
And they're scared of saying no because they're scared of losing that individual at some level. They're scared of, you know, perhaps the relationship ending, because maybe they've attached their sense of identity to the relationship, and you know, they you know, and I know I've been guilty of doing this, where, you know, I've placed the woman I'm with up on the pedestal, and I realized that was the wrong thing to do. It's because ultimately we're equal. It should be an equal relationship. And yeah, and if you do that, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, that resonates so well with me in terms of what I tell my clients. Because if you don't believe the person is your equal, then how can you have conversations where you're working productively together to co-parent? Because it's almost, if you put someone on a pedestal, then you believe their views always trump your views. So anything they tell you to do, even if you don't agree with it, you'll think that that's the right course of action. Where actually, as you said, Daniel, if you're equals, it means both of your views have equal weight. And if you don't like the way someone's treating you, it's fine for you to express that.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, as well, is that often I hear my friends and guys say, you know, we're out, and we say, okay, I need to check with my wife to see if she'll be okay with that. Or, you know, it's like they need her permission, which immediately you need your permission from an authority that's greater than you. Yeah. But the thing is, you're in a relationship, so it should be equal. So you should be able to say, yeah, 100%, I'm up for that. I'm just going to tell my wife or my other partner that I'm going to do that. You shouldn't have to, as a man or as a woman, ask for your partner's permission to do something. You know, that's not, unless you believe them to be your superior, in which case there's something amiss.
Wow. So really, so that could also present quite a huge conflict, isn't it? If you place this person higher up to you, that also creates a huge problem. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Crystal. We are going to have Crystal back again, and I want her to come and talk to us. She doesn't know yet. She's going to find out now. To come and talk to us about the financial side of it. All right, because we need to know the cost of financial side of it when you're going through divorce, and there's property involved, or how does that all works, the dynamics on that. All right, so Crystal, thank you so much for being here. If our clients or the men out there wants to contact you, how could they do that? Would you tell us how they can contact you?
Of course. So they can give me a call. Stalwart Solicitors, our number is 0345 222 0452. Or they can email us. My email address is crystal@stalwartsolicitors.com. Or, of course, they can have a look on our website. And another thing we've done to make things really easy for our clients is you'll have my calendar and you can actually book an appointment with me when I'm free. And it will be me that answers the phone, not a receptionist or a paralegal. And I'll help you with your 30 minutes free legal advice. So, yes, I would say don't think that any question is a silly question. And most importantly, I can promise you that if you have a family law issue, once you've talked to us, you'll feel that you'll have more clarity in terms of what your options are.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we will be adding Crystal's details on this, the link and everything on this video, so you can easily access without having to look around for it. So we will add that. Thank you so much. Okay, Matt King. Tell us about, oh, he's got. How could they reach you? Because I love Daniel. He's got an amazing program for the guys out there, for the men out there, and he's just going to share with you how you can reach. So how could they reach you?
Through my website, clearthepath.co.uk, and my email address is danield@clearthepath.co.uk. And I run my usual thing I do is workshops on letting go, and I help people release those stuck emotions that perhaps stop them from stepping into their powerful self. And so
thank you so much. Thank you. And I've definitely used that. That's really helpful. But also we're going to be adding all the contact details of my guest host and also our guest there onto this video, so you can reach out to these people. We are now coming to the end of this talk show, guys, and I want to say to you, please share and like the video, and you're going to get some valuable information and you can replay this again. Thank you so much to my co-host Daniel.
Thank you so much, Margaret, my queen. And Crystal, our wonderful guest, the returning guest, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been absolutely amazing.
Indeed, it's been
indeed, it's been absolutely awesome having you, Crystal. You have the last saying as our guest.
Yes, I'd just say thank you so much for having me, Margaret and Daniel. It's been lovely answering your questions, and I think what's so great about your talk show is the fact that it's a conversation. So it means that conversation evolves as people are asking questions and you're asking questions of me. And also I like the fact that both of you see the other side of the coin. So your clients are often my clients too, and they're all suffering from the same issues. And so a show like this helps them realise that they're not alone, and there's definitely support out there from lots of professionals who are there to help.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Indeed, guys, you're not alone. So remember, replay this if you need any advice. And if you think you've got a friend out there who may need to listen to Crystal Stewart, what she's outlined in terms of family court, the support, the help you can. And we are here. We want to say thank you so much for being with us. Share and like the video, please. And we appreciate you and we love you. God bless.